Hey everybody, it's Terry with Crafty Book Nerd here today to share with you the books I read for June. I had a great month in June. I read 11 books. Some of them were so good I read them in one day. So let's get into it. But before we do that, you know what time it is. Time for our quote of the day. And today's quote comes from Proverbs 15:15, and it says, "For the happy heart, life is a continual feast." I like to think I have a happy heart. So I do have some physical books here. Got to get these turned to the library. And then the other ones I've already had to turn in, or they were a Kindle. And so I don't have the actual physical book with me. So I'll just be showing you the cover of those that I printed out. Like I said, 11 books, so I was really tickled with that. And I will have to refer to my notes periodically on some of these books because it's been a minute since I read some of them. But the ones I liked, I definitely remember. So I'm going to start, the first one I'm going to start with is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I really liked the cover, kind of creepy, but it was cool. So this is a new release, one of the I'll be talking about what I spun on the wheel, and I had to choose some new releases. This one came out in 2024, and this is a historical fantasy. It's I have a love-hate relationship with Leigh Bardugo. Some of the stuff I like, some of the stuff I don't. This one I was somewhere in the middle. It's a story of magic and mystery. A young lady named Lucia who has magical powers, and at the moment she is a maid and she has to sleep on a dirt floor, and she has a really rough life, and she would like to have a better life, of course. And so when no one is looking to make things a little bit easier, she does use her magic from time to time. Well, one day she gets caught by the owner that she works for. The person that she works for catches her doing magic. And of course, then they just jump on it and think, oh my gosh, I need this person. They're going to help me to build my social status, and things are going to be so much better for me. And of course, Lucia is thinking, well, things are going to get better for her too. So there's a competition for her to do some magic. And so we follow that and we see what happens. There were times I was really confused. There was a lot going on, and at times I just could not keep up with everything. But I did give it 3 stars, and that's mainly because I really like Lucia, the main character, because her story was a story of suffering and hope and love, and so I enjoyed that part of it. There were a lot of characters and there were a lot of subplots, so it was hard to follow. But overall, it was a good read, and I gave it 3 stars. The next one that I picked up was Mercury by Amy Jo Burns. I picked this one up because not only was it 2024 release, but my currently reading podcast mentioned this one. And so I thought I would check it out because I've had good luck reading books that they've talked about. This book is definitely about a dysfunctional family. If that's a trope you like, then you need to definitely check this one out. It's about a young lady in the 1990s. She's a teenager, Marley, and she arrives in Pennsylvania in the small town of Mercury. And she meets the Baylor family, who are roofers, and that's what they do for a living. She dates one, but she marries another one. And she just wants to be part of a family, and that's what this book is all about. It's about family secrets. It's about flawed characters, and what one might do to be included in a family if you did not have one. I became very invested in the story of the different characters, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave this one 4 stars. The next one was also one, it's a backlist. It's called Rubbernecker by Belinda Bauer. I never heard of it. Another one that I heard of from the Currently Reading podcast, so I thought I would check it out. This is about Patrick, and Patrick has Asperger's syndrome. And he is a medical student, and for some reason, Patrick is very much interested in death. And so he is, like I said, in medical school, and he's in one of his classes, anatomy, and they have a cadaver, and what they have to do, each team has to to inspect the cadaver, do the autopsy, do everything, and see if they can figure out how that person died. Well, this is exactly what Patrick is interested in, and so he dives right in to find out. The only problem is that there are some things that aren't quite fitting together, and so he begins investigating to find out what actually happened to the cadaver. And he starts asking questions, and some people are not liking where he is going with this, and so his life actually becomes endangered. But he is determined he is going to prove what happened to this cadaver. The writing was very descriptive, and sometimes it was a little bit too much descriptive when they were doing the autopsies, but I managed to stay with it and read it anyway. I'm not sure how well they handled Patrick's condition of Asperger's, but I do know that he was a very determined young man, and he overcame a lot of obstacles to find out what happened to his cadaver, and even though his life was in danger. And I did enjoy it, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next is an audiobook that I listened to, and that's The Ghost of Harvard by Franziska Saratelli. This was a long audiobook. I did not think I was ever going to finish it. And at times I almost gave up, but I had to see what happened, so I kept listening. So this is about Candace, and Candace is setting off to Harvard, but not for the reason that you might think. Candace is going to Harvard because her brother Eric committed suicide when he was at Harvard, and she does not believe he committed suicide, and she wants to find out what happened to her brother. So she is so lost without him, so she goes back and she starts investigating to see what happened during his last year of school there. As she investigates, of course, more questions come up. She gets more questions than answers. And then she starts to hear voices. There are 3 distinct voices that come to her, and we find out that these voices are ghosts. And she begins to think maybe she's losing it like her brother lost it, and that scares her because she knows that that could be hereditary. But she is drawn into the world of the ghost and hoping to find answers and get to the truth. And I was satisfied with the ending. Like I said, it was long, but I did enjoy it. It was good. Just know that going into it, there is suicide, and there's also, it's very long, a long audiobook. The next one is Wolf Song by T.J. Klune. I know T.J. Klune, as most of you probably do, if you've read The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I absolutely loved, and I can't wait for the next one in that story that's coming out soon. I can't wait to get my hands on that. So I thought, let me see what else he's written. Maybe he's an author I want to read to zero. And so I picked up this Wolf Song, which is a series, and I picked this one up and started reading it. It's about the Bennett family. And the Bennett family is not just a family, they're a pack. You guessed it, werewolves. And this is Ox's story. Ox is not a werewolf, but he's got some interesting characteristics, and he falls in line with the Bennett family. When he is 16, he is on his own, and that's when he meets the Bennett family when they move next door. And his life changes once he meets them. It's a story about family, love, friendship, forgiving, and I did enjoy it. I gave it 3 stars. I'm not sure I'll continue with the series, and I'm not sure I'll read, the rest of these by T.J. Klune, but I did enjoy it. 3 stars for me. The next one was a NetGalley book, and I had said I was going to try to read 3 NetGalley books, but I actually only got to 1. And that's The Therapist by S.A. Falk. There is another book called The Therapist by P.A. Paris. What's her name? Something like that. But anyway, this is a different author with the same title. Like I said, from NetGalley. So thanks to NetGalley for giving me an early release of this one. I really enjoyed the premise of this book. It's about a therapist, and not just any kind of therapist. She is a therapist who treats criminals. And in this case, she is treating a man named Trent. And Trent is in prison because he has committed several killings, and he is considered a serial killer. And so it is about her digging into what made him that way and finding out about him. And actually, he becomes a quite likable character as you read this story. But now other murders are happening, and they're following the same path that the murders that he committed. But of course, he's in jail. So if he's in jail, then who's committing these murders? It's very dark. At times it was dark. At times I got confused, but it did keep me on my toes. And I wanted to play detective, and I wanted to find out what was going on. I enjoyed it. It was definitely a bit of a thriller. And so that was good. And the twist at the end was a surprise. And I like to be surprised. So that was nice too. And it was a 3-star for me. And that's The Therapist. The next one, I was so ready to get this book. I almost bought it. I'm glad I didn't. Because it was a bit of a disappointment, and that is The Housemaid is Watching by Freida McFadden. Freida McFadden is an author I want to read to zero. Read the other 2 Housemaid books, The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret, and this is the 3rd one, The Housemaid is Watching. And here we follow Millie, and you'll remember Millie from the other books, and she is now out of jail. She is married and has 2 children, and she's on like Long Island, and she's hoping to settle down there. Gotta get my notes. She's hoping to settle down in Long Island with her husband, Enzo. But things don't quite go as planned because they both have secrets that they aren't sharing. There were several twists I didn't see coming, but compared to the other 2 books, this one was a letdown. It was not as much of a thriller. It was not as mysterious. And I did read it in one sitting. It was fast-paced. It was a quick read, and I did enjoy it. But of the 3 books in this series, this was probably my least favorite. But it was entertaining. And if you did read the other 2, then you'll probably want to read it so that you can find out what happens to Millie as she continues on after she gets out of jail. So that was The Housemaid is Watching. The next books, I actually have the books for the next reviews. The first one is End of Story by A.J. Finn. And this book was just not for me. I almost DNF'd it, but I'm not a quitter. I hate DNF, and I keep reading thinking, oh, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Well, it never did get better, and I really feel like I wasted my time reading this 398-page book. I stayed confused 2/3 of the time. I didn't know who was telling the story. I couldn't figure out how the parts were linked. It would have been a 1-star, but there was a little bit of a twist at the end that helped me to kind of make sense of some of the stuff that was going on in the book. And that's about all I'm going to say about it. If, you know, you like this author and it sounds like a premise you might want to read, check it out and let me know what you think, but it just wasn't for me. I gave it 2 stars. The next one, Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda, also a thriller. I've read several of Megan Miranda's books, and I enjoyed them, so I thought this would be a fun read. This book has a popular trope that I've seen many times in other books where someone returns to their hometown because something has happened and they've got to go back and sort things out and figure things out. Well, that's what happens in this book. We have Hazel, and Hazel Sharp is the daughter of the area's longtime detective, and he has died, and she is returning home to claim her inheritance. When she left and moved away, her family were not on good terms. And now there's a drought in the area, and so everybody's a bit on edge because there's a water shortage. And matters get worse when they pull, when the lakes start going down, the water in the lakes start going down, they pull 2 cars out. And Hazel recognizes these cars, and from there, things just take off. She has questions about what happened to her father, what happened to her mother, and who played a part in it, and who's hiding secrets. It was a good read. I enjoyed it. Not a lot of surprises for me. There were some things that I did figure out. And like I said, read her before, will read her again. Gave this one 3 stars. Daughter of Mine. I'm going to save that one for last. I'm going to skip to Family Family. Family Family by Laurel Frankel. I'm not sure where I heard about this book. It's a new release, came out in 2024. This book was messy, but it was messy in a good way. Messy in a good way. It centers around India. And India grew up knowing that no matter what life threw her way, she was going to be a famous actress one day. And she set out on that path and did what she needed to do to get there. There were some life events that happened. I'm not going to tell you what those are for her that got in the way, but she figured out a way to get through those and press forward. We have two different timelines in this book. We have the current India and what she's going through as an actress, and with her twins. She has twins, and her movie career. So that's one of the timelines. The other timeline is where we have India when she's growing up and discovering what she wants to be, an actress, and the things that happen to her along that way that get her to the point she is now in the story. So I liked having those two different views of her, one as a teenager and one as a grown adult. She decides to do a movie, and the movie is about adoption. And adoption is something that she knows about because she adopted the twins that she now has. And she decides that she's going to tell people the truth about adoption. Well, that doesn't go over well with her publicist. Then the media goes crazy. The paparazzi stake out at her house. And everybody wants more from her, more information, more of her story. Her 10-year-old twins decide to get involved, and they decide to help her out. And so they go on a search for some other people that have a part in the story, and they bring them all together. And what we find out in this story is that family is not always blood. Family can be complicated, family can be messy, but family is family. I enjoyed it very much. I gave it 4 stars, and that's Family Family. And now I want to talk about the book that I read that was my favorite book of the month of June. Oops, I lost my notes. It is a 2024, came out in 2024. I'm not sure where I heard about it from. I might have just seen it somewhere and picked it up. But that book is The Underground Library by Jennifer Ryan. As a reader, I love any kind of book that talks about libraries or librarians or bookstores. Anything that has to do with books, then I'm all in. So just the word library in the title sold me on getting this book. I started this book one night at about 8 o'clock, and I finished it about midnight. I could not go to sleep until I knew what was going to happen with the characters in this book. I became invested in their stories and wanted to know, and kept reading and reading, and absolutely loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. It's a story about 3 women in London. It's a historical fiction, and I did not realize it till after I had finished that it was based on real events that happened. These 3 women, their lives end up being entwined together as they take shelter during the bombing in underground train tunnels. First, we have Juliet. Juliet is the deputy librarian. She is not received well when she comes to town because she's a woman. And of course, men didn't think that women, could be good librarians. But she set out to prove them wrong. And then we have Katie. And Katie works at the library, and she's kind of working there through the summer because she plans to go to university when school starts. And then we have Sophie. Sophie is a Jewish refugee who is just trying to find her family. And what happens with these 3 women who come from different walks of life is the library saves them. It saves them. And through the library, they develop a friendship with each other. They develop a relationship with their community. It's a story of survival, friendship, community, love. Like I said, I read it in one day. I wanted to find out what was going to happen to each of these ladies. We get the story from each of their viewpoints and what's going on with them. And it was just so, so good. it probably will be in my top 10 books for 2024. That's how much I enjoyed it. So there you have it, the 11 books that I managed to get through in June. I'm not sure I will read quite as much in July, as I'll be taking a big trip in July, and I'll be gone for several weeks, and I will do some reading during that time, but mostly I'll be sightseeing, so I won't get a lot of reading done. So if you've read any of these books and have any comments about them, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And I'll be coming back to you later as I spin the wheel for my July reads. And I'm probably only going to pick 4 or 5 books for July. Like I said, I will not have as much reading time in July. And so I don't want to overwhelm myself with picking too many books. So thanks for watching, Crafty Book Nerd. And if you've been here a while, I appreciate you so very much. I think I'm 3 subscribers away from 500. It seems like it's never going to happen. But I know one day I'm going to log in and it's going to say 500, or it's going to be over 500, and I'm going to hit the moon because I still have those prizes. I have those prizes boxed up and ready to go to somebody if I could just get to 500. So if you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button and subscribe to my channel. And again, thanks for hanging out with me, talking about books. And I'll have some crafty goodness coming your way soon. Thanks, everybody.